All right, Joe Glass, Joe Glass. Stop fighting. Write what people will pay you for. Do you want to make comics, or do you want to sell comics? Because there's a big difference there. Is this a hobby or a business? It's past time to decide that. So if anyone wants to send me comics or anything else, I've got the mailbox now, or hand-drawn art, death threats, airport bottles of 15 milliliters of joy, pharmaceuticals, whatever. Okay, so to be fair enough, I did see Zach's thumbnail on the YouTube on the topic of this, but I didn't watch his video because I only binge his stuff every 6 months, and he's excellent, of course, but I have to be in the comics mood. So I saw the thumbnail, and then I go to Twitter, and I type in his name, and the first tweet I saw was this: Joe Glass losing his mind over some stupid EVS tweet. So here's the thing. Can EVS be an asshole? Absolutely. But so can I, or Joe, or anyone else. But EVS can help you sell your comic if you're in the business of selling comics, which I'm not, but Joe Glass actually, I think, is. So Joe Glass and I cannot help you do that. I wish I could. EVS has a big platform because he worked at building it. And to be fair, he isn't just some sociopath who's petting his cat with the steel glove and the Hugo Boss and his Roman saluting to German marching music, or Erica's playing in the background with that little Japanese girl pounding on the wall. That's the cutest thing I've ever seen. So that's what the left-wing anti-Comicsgate seem to think he is doing. Their strawman version of Zach and EVS is from a James Bond movie. It was never made, but it was like circa 1970. It's just so weirdly bizarre and as far from the truth as possible. And don't get me wrong, it would be a much weirder and funner Comicsgate if there were killer attack robots and sharks with lasers and firing squads for degenerates and whatever. That's what the Joe Glass types don't understand. EVS or anyone else who's got a platform on YouTube, well, they put a lot of time into live streams, into making videos, even doing skits and going to toy stores, buying Rose Tico dolls and using it for target practice in the backyard. He tried a lot of things that failed, but he knew his number one job was to entertain people by doing live streams. He had to get eyeballs. So he worked at building a platform. Now, the soy boys and cat ladies don't understand that aspect of it, the totality of the circumstances. They seem to think that the product is the thing in and of itself, res ipsa loquitur, the thing speaks for itself. No, Mr. Latin dude, and that's the only Latin I remember. The public relations and advertising is the biggest issue. What's the thing about perfume? It's citrus and ambergris, or used to be in an ethanol base. So you say 100 milliliters of perfume costs $5 to make, and it smells great. The thing is, truth be told, is like cheap perfumes and expensive perfumes. There's a bunch of cheap perfumes that actually smell pretty good. But you get Paris Hilton to say that it smells like her coos, and the ad campaign is $200 per bottle. And you sell it for $300 per 100 milliliters of whale puke, citrus, and rose. Is it worth $300? Yes, if people pay for it. That's just the bottom line. You're selling the sizzle, the fantasy, and the feelings associated with that thing. There's a saying that the first thing you have to do is learn to fake honest enthusiasm. Now, I personally like EVS, but I also don't hate Joe Glass, because you don't get to be Joe Glass without a difficult and painful journey. It's probably pretty common with soy boys. It's why so many of them are bitter, broken, resentful people. If I could wave my wand and make Joe Glass's comics sell, I absolutely would. I can't do that, but I can wave my $100 tablet and get you started. Step 1, eat less and start walking. Lose 50 pounds of fat and you'll tell better stories. And more importantly, you'll be less of an asshole on Twitter. 2, stop fighting with people on Twitter, specifically Comicsgate. It doesn't make you money. It actually doesn't. What's that scene from, not Terry Pratchett, Douglas Adams? There's a line in the book where the guy is laying down in front of his house because they're going to come drive a wrecking ball through it, and there's a 10,000 pound tractor in front of it, and the guy goes, "You have any idea what damage you'll do to this tractor when it runs you over?" And he goes, "No," and he goes, "None at all." So fighting with Comicsgate doesn't, and they destroyed his house anyway, but they also destroyed the earth. God, Douglas Adams, what great books he made. The thing is, fighting with Comicsgate doesn't actually make you any money at all. It doesn't hurt Comicsgate at all. You're not bombing the Japanese monsters in World War II. You're a fat 40-year-old yelling at the clouds about other fat 40-year-olds. It makes you look like an adult with a childish control of his emotions. There's this. I cannot zoom in on Twitter. I don't use Twitter anymore. There's another image. Oh, God, that is friggin' horrible. I mean, it's not related to the argument, but that's just a horrible. So she's female. Some characters just don't work. Well, that character worked. Is somewhat sexy and fit She-Hulk work. That did not work. And that doesn't work at all. So the thing is, if Comicsgate is dirty, which is your argument, and it's not, it's just a group of people. Like you're involved in a group of people, and I mean, are you going to judge the entire group by a few members? You can't do that to any group, or at least you say you don't do that to other groups. You can't do it to CG either. And I actually did talk to Joe Glass behind the scenes before, and I said something like, there's more to CG than just EVS. You got issues with him, and he was really dramatic, and he was just too dramatic, blowing things out of proportion. I'll leave it at that. So the thing is, if Comicsgate is dirty, then all you're doing is rolling around in the mud. Stop. All the time you spend on Twitter, you should spend it writing and editing, or reading stories and taking notes about what makes them good stories. You're never finished as a writer. Go through your old stories and rewrite them, fix them, change perspectives. Your stuff isn't selling now. You have time to spend on Twitter. Then you should be spending all that time writing and studying writing, more importantly. Look at things that are in the solar system of the kind of stuff you want to write and sell. But look at the stories that are successful. You're Joe Glass. Don't go look at Mags Visaggio's Kim and Kim's. And I've read everything both these people have written, because, you can find it online. Kim and Kim, by issue 5, was down to 900 copies. You don't need to read that as anything other than an example of what not to do. And it's the same for your stuff, the Pride and all the other stuff about the anthropomorphic things. It's just too much. It's just you're just gilding the lily. It's just way over the top. Dial it back to go. Honestly, and I know you're not going to do this. Read some Comicsgate stuff, and read like a Jawbreakers and Ironsides, something like that, or what's Mike Miller's stuff, Lone Star, something like that, where you got an ensemble cast, which is what you were trying to do, and you go, okay, one of the ancillary characters, because Joe Glass is very, very gay, which is fine, but you're in a commercial enterprise here. So you go read like one of those the Lone Star things. Go, okay, I want to do something like this, an ensemble cast. One of the ancillary characters, we're going to make him BLT. That's all you can do if you want to sell to a big market. Like, you have to accept the rules of the game. You can't make everybody BLT, because that reads like one of those old one of those, like, when comics were selling, what do you call those, like, safety pamphlets or something, or like industry, like the glyphosate production industry has got Spider-Man talking about safety on the job. Like, this is a production line about, and they get a long line of chemical equations and differential equations, and like, on this job, union safety number 1, and this is the Mangler from Stephen King. You get the idea. That's what Joe Glass's stuff reads like. Like, it's a kind of a, today we're going to cover skateboarding safety and elbow pads and knee pads, and like, okay, this is not a real Spider-Man comic book. This is just a little bit of propaganda on the necessity of wearing your helmet when you're doing rail slides. So the thing is, if you got time to spend on Twitter, you should be writing and studying writing. It sounds like I'm judging by your Twitter, you do have that free time. And honestly, the milquetoast political takes are absolutely pointless. It's the most mundane, vanilla, normie, boring, politically correct cancer. You're not bringing anything new to the table because you're terrified of being canceled by these, let's click on this, by these cultural Marxist parasites in your own party. Your vanilla, virtue signaling political takes are so painfully stupid Because you're saying exactly the same developmentally disabled, pointless ramblings that everyone else is saying. You have 8,000 followers in 15 years because you're painfully boring and predictable, which is a problem because you're a writer. Perhaps you can see the issue here. EVS is not a great writer by any stretch, but he is a competent writer and he's funny. And that's good enough for a comic about a frog. EVS is a good enough writer to tell funny stories, which is good enough to make him millions of dollars. Just stop thinking of a good comeback to take me down a peg or put your Twitter enemies down with a bon mot. If only you could think of a clever, witty rejoinder, then you'd dunk on the Nazi Chads. Okay, and then what? You get some clever one-liners off and you really put those Chad Hugo Boss in their place. Gosh, we sure are dumb. And, okay, fair enough. So you did that. And then what? EVS sells another $1 million worth of comics, toys, and coffee mugs. But what do you get out of the deal? Nothing. You get nothing. Comicsgate is able to monetize. The big channels, that are selling, they have big social media footprint. They're selling a lot of stuff. They're selling themselves. They're able to monetize all of this stuff. I'm doing this just for fun. But EVS is selling millions of dollars worth of merchandise. And you're selling comics also, or at least you're trying to, or you want to, but you're not doing the things that sell comics. But all these other people who are in Comicsgate are doing the things that sell comics, and they're having a fun time doing it, and they're not coming across as bitter, resentful, and angry, which is what you're coming across as. I hope EVS sells $10 million of merchandise this year, but also hope that Joe Glass decides to have a come to Odin movement, because I know he's not going to have a come to Jesus. Maybe Odin, Mars, or I don't know, something from a different pantheon will be something he can touch base with, and decide to be his own man and just focus on writing the best stuff he can possibly write, and also the best stuff that he can find an audience for. Because we live in the real world, I can write my stories about the fractal flowers in the hell dimension of waking nightmares where all sentient plant life lives backwards in time, but it probably would raise $30 on Indiegogo, and that would be a failed campaign. That's just the cold, hard reality. Iron Sights and Jawbreakers. A bunch of guys go on adventures around the world. You throw in some supernatural monkeys and superheroes, and that's good enough. You've got I.B. Canellis with his quick and fast style for Iron Sights, and John Malin was doing the original ones. It finds an audience. It's good. Zach and EVS don't have to be your enemy, but you created enemies, but you didn't monetize on it because you don't have a social media footprint, like, at all. 7,400 followers for over 10 years on Twitter. Like I got on Twitter, I got 1,100 in a weekend because I was funny. You're here for 14 years and you got 7,500 followers, which is a problem because you're not an artist, I think, right? You're the writer, right? I'm almost sure about this. If you're an artist, you draw stuff. Okay, maybe that's fine. That's how you speak your. You express yourself in the universe. But I think you're the writer. Okay, you're a writer, a comics creator. Okay, so that's a problem. This small social. It's not about followers. Yeah, see, that's the thing. The reciprocal thing is. It is all connected. The totality of the circumstances. It's all these facets of the crystal. But the goal is to exchange product for money. And you should know that. You should know that by now. The thing is, I don't know if you're ever going to be friends with EVS, but Zach didn't have to be your enemy. If you want to smother a fire online, you just mute somebody and you ignore them. You don't have to block them. Actually, muting sometimes is a better bet because it's just a black hole of emptiness. Never mention them. You just work on your own stuff. Anyway, I think maybe you can tell that, joking aside, I'm not your enemy either. Do you want to make comics or do you want to sell comics? Ultimately, it's up to you because, you're running, this is not working and you're going to have to, you've got a day job. I don't know what you're doing. Say you sell insurance in your day job. like eventually you're going to give up comics, and it's like you don't have to give up comics in totality. In toto, you just have to adjust them to first figure out, go in the direction of what sells, and then at least get some sales under your belt. And then if you want to make stuff gayer and gayer, but it's not like you have to get the audience first by selling something way more mainstream. Like dial all this BLT stuff down for a few years. Like you want to include secondary characters, fair enough. But you got to sell something to the mainstream to get a much, much bigger audience. And then you can go, oh, I actually have another line of gay comics. And the thing is, if you sell to a mainstream audience for 5 years, or you start chasing a mainstream audience by selling what will connect with them, and you learn how to be a better writer for 5 years, 5-10 years from now, you're going to look back at these earlier, what is this called? Pride and I don't know what the other one. You're going to look back at these comics and you're going to cringe. You're going to be like, well, 10 years, 5 years later, these are not very good comics. That was who you were when you wrote these comics, but it shouldn't be who you are now, and it shouldn't be who you are in 10 years. Like, you don't have to, you got to get that audience first. And, you could learn a lot from Comicsgate. Yes, I know if you're watching this video, you're thinking of all these quick one-liners, and I'm sure you're much quicker-witted than I am. I'm not a writer, and I'm sure you've got a great vocabulary and all this kind of stuff, and you're quick-witted and whatever. But, like, none of that stuff, like putting me down or putting Zach down or whoever else and all these other people in Comicsgate, you've got all these great one-liners. But you're in the business of selling a product. So do you want to dunk on the Chad Nazis, or do you want to sell product? The best revenge would be selling product to the Chad Nazis, right? Or is that just inconceivable to you? Anyway, like, comment, subscribe. I will see you guys all next episode.